Welcome to the Vin Armani Show. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/VinArmani. Also on Twitter and Periscope at Vin Armani is my handle there. We are proud members of the Activist Post Podcast Network, so you can check out all of our audio archives at activistpost.com. Well, it's 10 a.m. Pacific time on a Monday, so that means we are back once again, coming to you from fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. Have an excellent show for you today. A guest that we have had on a couple of times, and someone who has really become an inspiration to me, as I know she is to a great many people. Our guest today is Lyn Ulbricht, the mother of Ross Ulbricht, whose case we will discuss. It's moved now all the way to almost being taken on by the Supreme Court, but it is in the process of that happening. We've had her on, but I realized that the last time we had her on was in May, and a lot has happened since then. So very honored to have Lyn on. And for those people who don't know about Ross Ulbricht's case, this is an important show. Pay close attention. This is one everybody should know about. Also, hey, I just read the government's not shut down. Not shut down today. So we are going to have some discussion about perhaps it should be shut down. I mean, that's one of the things that we want to do. The reasons why, and some other crazy stories as well as some crypto stories which go hand in hand with Ross's case. I think there's just such important developments within the culture and the legal system, and I think it's really going to frame where we need to move forward to in the future. To help me get through all of this on this very important show, as always, my good friend, co-host and producer, Mr. Christian Reyes. Christian.
Good morning, Vin.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. So, as I said, the last time we had Lyn on the show was May.
Mm-hmm. It's been a while.
It's been a while, and she was actually our first guest on the very, very first show, which is amazing, right?
Yeah.
I think that it's perfect. It's perfect for what this show is about, because I think Ross is a very important person. And I said to her on that show, and I've said many times publicly, Ross Ulbricht is our movement's Nelson Mandela. Mm-hmm. Now, the last time I said that on the show, which was May, a woman from South Africa reached out to me in a quite long email, as a matter of fact, sort of trying to take me to task for saying that Ross was Nelson Mandela. Now,
interesting.
What Nelson Mandela means to a South African, and Nelson Mandela, of course, was imprisoned for 27 years. Mm-hmm. He was the head of the ANC, which was a sort of opposition political party during the time of apartheid. He then ended up, after his release, he became a symbol of the fight against South African apartheid during his imprisonment in Robben Island, along with many other leaders. But he in particular became a symbol. After his release, he then, after apartheid ended, went on to become the first black president of South Africa. Mm-hmm. So she was taking me to task for, and a fair criticism on her part, to be honest, saying that, listen, Nelson Mandela was a violent terrorist. That's why he was imprisoned, because he was either ordering or participating in terrorist acts against apartheid. Mm-hmm. The ANC was sort of like the South African version of the IRA, you could say, the Irish Republican Army, right? Who ended up, people associated with that struggle ended up being in control of Ireland as well. Mm-hmm. Round about the same time, as a matter of fact. So this is a fair point. And she was saying Ross was imprisoned for all nonviolent offenses. Now, I was never trying to make that, there was no equivalence there. And so I want to, for those people, just in case there are some other people listening when I say this, to explain what I mean when I say Ross Ulbricht is this movement's Nelson Mandela. What I mean is this. Nelson Mandela was released from prison after 27 years in 1990. Apartheid still existed. Apartheid ended in 1991. Now, you think back to this time, this is a very important time in the world. This is a huge shift in global culture. The wall had just come down a year before that, right? So you've got the wall coming down. Within 2 years, you've got apartheid ending in South Africa. I remember when Nelson Mandela was released from prison in 1990, he went on a world tour. And my parents took myself and my brother, so at this point I'm like, I don't know, I'm like 12, 11, 12, right? Took my brother and I to see this, he was going to give a speech, and that there were, you know, quite a few South African dignitaries and dignitaries from all over. This was at the LA Coliseum. It was completely full of people, right? LA Coliseum's huge. It was full of people in the stands, and it was full of people down on the field, right? And it was dope. Like, the music was amazing. Like, Ladysmith Black Mambaza played, and Hugh Masekela was there. And like, so it was just this amazing event. And so you got to think, so here I am. I'm 12 years old. What I understand about this is, especially as you know, as being of mixed race, right? Going there and seeing like, okay, this injustice is going to end in this country. The whole entire world had basically decided this South African apartheid can no longer continue. The whole entire world was against it. Now, I'm 12 years old. When I'm born, Nelson Mandela's already been in jail for 15 years. Who he is to me has nothing to do with violent terrorism. Who he is to me, and I think most of the people in the world, is a symbol of another idea, of an ending of an injustice that was being perpetrated by the state against a large group of people. Okay? And that basically his release, although apartheid didn't end, his release was a sort of it was the idea that like people understood, and I think our communal consciousness understood that like once Mandela is out, this injustice will be over.
Gotcha.
And it was. Like, it still took time for the laws to change, but the injustice, at that point, it really was a symbol that, like, yes, if Nelson's out, then that means this injustice will end. And so I really do see Ross as representing that, because it brings in all of the cultural changes that are happening, right? So we've got the idea of voluntarism, right? We've got ideas of privacy. We've got ideas of, you know, does the government have the right to tell you what you can and cannot put into your body? Right? Does the government have the right to prevent you from making nonviolent transactions? You've got cryptocurrency involved in there as well, right?
Yeah.
So here you have a guy who's basically in prison for facilitating nonviolent exchange that uses cryptocurrency. And we've got, in that time, from 2013 to now, we have a situation where, you know, it was small amounts of marijuana that was, for the most part, what was being traded on the Silk Road. And we'll get into all of this for the people who don't know the whole story. Ross was basically in prison for creating a website. That was the charges. Creating a website that enabled people to trade just about anything using cryptocurrency, using Bitcoin, on the dark web. So, but now we've got a situation where we've got legal, I can walk down the street to a store here in Nevada and I can go and buy weed.
Right.
And some of those stores accept Bitcoin. Now we have a situation where that's completely legal, but there's somebody in jail, not for even doing it, but for facilitating that it could possibly be done. And so it's like we've got a huge, like the culture has already changed, but we will fully know that that the culture has changed, but we have recognized it and we're ready to say no more when Ross is free.
Yeah, that's great. So it's really interesting because I'm glad you explained that, because last night I was actually putting together like a short video, because I was thinking maybe doing a cool t-shirt to support Ross and stuff like that for Govern Yourself.
I love it. And
I put together a short video and I put Nelson Mandela on there and Ross, but then I was like, I didn't really know the tie between the two and how it represented, but there it is right there. So I actually stopped doing the video because I wasn't sure exactly what it meant.
No, that's it. I mean, I think for most people, look, for South Africans, it's going to be different. right? Like they have a whole historical context
Right.
that people outside of South Africa, it doesn't make sense to them, right? It's the same idea as like what the Confederate flag means to a native Southerner and what it means to someone else, right? What it means to someone from Washington, you know, or from California. There's a different historical and cultural context there. But Nelson Mandela, as sort of the global figure, is a figure of wrongful imprisonment, or if not wrongful, because it's not even that it's necessarily wrongful imprisonment, but he's a marker of cultural change and of a decision that what perhaps is not an injustice at one time, when it becomes and is understood to be an injustice at another time, it must be corrected.
Man, that's great.
And so, and that's why for me his case is so important, because if he's not free, we're not free. Because our heads and our hearts are not free if he's not free. That's why it's so important. Like for all these people out there who are holding Bitcoin, who don't even know who Ross Ulbricht is, to me, that just tells me we've got so much more work to do to make people understand what this is all about.
Yeah, that's really cool. I actually found a great quote. I'm going to look it up right now because I don't remember it off the top of my head. But because I was trying to figure out the tie between Nelson Mandela and Ross and stuff like that, and how it represented it. It's a great quote from Nelson Mandela. And,
he's got a lot of them.
It's simple too. I just can't remember it right now. Anyways, we'll
find it.
Yeah, I'll look.
We'll find it. So speaking of shirts, if I would love to, I think that's a great idea to do shirts to support Ross. Speaking of shirts, tell people where they can get those. There we go. Governyourself.com. I think we've got the Feel the BS shirt. There you go. Bernie Sanders. Just throw the address up there again, just so people have it. GVRNURSLF.com. You can also go to Christian's Twitter. I'm sure there's some links on there and some links on mine, but you may have to dig through. Speaking of Twitter, oh man. So I made a shutdown prediction on Twitter where I said they'll be right back at it on Monday. Don't believe the hype. They'll be back at it on Monday, and officially they're back at it. Like, really? You think they're going to stop stealing? You really think they're going to stop stealing for more than half of a day? These are thieves. These are thieves. They're not going to stop stealing. And it's so funny. It's like, wait, the government shut down, but I'm seeing a live feed from the Senate floor on C-SPAN. There's staff members walking around. There's refreshments. The lights are on. I'm like, that does not look like a shutdown business to me. Not at all. So Twitter, though, we'll start off news number one in this way. So let's just go ahead and jump right into the news. Oh boy, we wish it could get shut down. We wish it could get shut down. But I think the idea that people could say, oh, there's a government shutdown, is really perhaps a misunderstanding of what the government is at this point. Like, what does, I think that within our community, people get the idea that, like, oh, the banks are heavily involved. Like, every time I bring something up, people are always like, you're leaving out the Federal Reserve. You're leaving out the banks. No, I'm not leaving out the banks. They're an integral part of the whole web. When we talk about the state, they're an integral part of the state. They're as integral a part of the state as the Roman Catholic Church or the Anglican Church was to England. A place that had a state religion. Like, it's the Archbishop of Canterbury is very much a member of the state. Like, he's authenticating the divine right of the king to even exist. And the banks do the same thing with the lending of money. And isn't that really about what the government shutdown is? The government shutdown is really about them voting to get more credit from the central bank. But I think that we're seeing now that it's extending even further. Like, from the beginning of the show, we had said, read 1984, read 1984, because Orwell's predictions were steadily coming true. Something very Orwellian happened to me, and also about 700,000 other people this week. It was in the form of an email from Twitter. Why don't you go ahead and show this letter? It said, "Dear Vin Armani, as part of our recent work to understand Russian-linked activities on Twitter during the 2016 U.S. presidential election, we identified and suspended a number of accounts that were potentially connected to a propaganda effort by a Russian government-linked organization known as the Internet Research Agency, IRA. Consistent with our commitment to transparency, we are emailing you because we have reason to believe that you either followed one of these accounts or retweeted or liked content from these accounts during the election period. This is purely for your own information purposes and is not related to a security concern for your account. We are sharing this information so that you can learn more about these accounts and the nature of the Russian propaganda effort. You can see examples of content from these suspended accounts on our blog if you're interested. People look to Twitter for useful, timely, and appropriate information. We are taking active steps to stop malicious accounts and tweets from spreading, and we are determined to keep ahead of the tactics of bad actors. For example, in recent months we have developed new techniques to identify accounts manipulating our platform, have improved our process for challenging suspicious accounts, and have introduced new measures designed to identify and take action on coordinated malicious activity. In 2018, we are building on these improvements. Our blog also contains more information about these efforts. People come to Twitter to see what's happening in the world. We are committed to making it the best place to do that, and to being transparent with the people who use and trust our platform. Twitter." So, Christian, this, as somebody who is a fan of Orwell, this one really struck me. In the early pages, the first chapter of 1984, the hero, Winston, he's secretly writing in a journal. And he says that, of course, this wasn't against the law, because there were no laws. But if he was caught, he would most certainly be punished by death. This is Orwellian to me because of the idea that here they write this letter. They say, we're emailing you because we have reason to believe that you either, well, first off, reason to believe, well, you know what I follow, like it's not exactly. Reason to believe, like what the fuck is that all about? It's in the database, goddammit. We are emailing you because we have reason to believe that you either followed one of these accounts, which I didn't, because I only follow about 45 people, so I know that's not true. And I know everybody that I follow. Or retweeted or liked content from these accounts during the election period. Now, they sent this to 677,775 people in the U.S., okay? There's 70 million people, 70 million U.S. Twitter accounts. So this is about 1% of all, 1 out of every 100 people got one of these. Now that's a lot, right? Retweeted or liked content. So just liking content. But then what they don't do is they don't say which account, which item I liked or retweeted. But then they go on to say, this is purely for your own information purposes and is not related to a security concern for your account. We are sharing this information so that you can learn more about these accounts and the nature of the Russian propaganda effort. What account? What can I learn? Yes. I don't know what I liked. I don't know what, you won't tell me what I liked. You won't tell me what I retweeted. You've removed the accounts and the tweets. What is this except for Big Brother is watching you?
Exactly.
What else could it be?
Inject some fear into people.
Like literally, what else could it? And especially the we have reason to believe. See that reason to believe thing? That's something that law enforcement uses. That's a law enforcement term. We have reason to believe. That's what you call probable cause. And then it's like, is that that I retweeted or liked something. But the question is like, okay, so you go to the blog and you're like, well, what are the types of things that someone may like or retweet? Now, mind you, to just simply like something means you're scrolling through, you see something, like, it's a knee-jerk reaction. Boom.
Yeah, it could have been.
I like 50 to 100 things a day on Twitter.
Yeah, it could have been just an image that you.
Well, let's look at what it was. Let's look at what it was. Go to these examples. So here you go. The account is Pamela Moore 13. This person, it's a shot of a shirt of someone at an actual Trump rally. The shirt says, it's the back of the shirt, it says, Obama called me a clinger, Hillary calls me deplorable, terrorists call me infidel, Trump calls me American. And then the comment is, great shirt. Now, it's one thing to say, this is extreme Russian pride. Do you know how many people, every single Trump supporter would like this photo? And so what are they saying? Are they saying that this guy attending the Trump rally in this shirt is a Russian agent of is a Russian propaganda agent? Is that really what they're saying? Go to this next one. Here's Bill Clinton sitting with Chelsea. He's got a kind of a worried look on his face. It's from Tennessee GOP is the name of the at Tennessee, TEN_GOP. It says, you don't even need these polls. Donald Trump won. You can read it on Bill Clinton's face. But Donald Trump did win. How is that propaganda? How would that sway the election? How? I don't even understand. Do you know how many people would like such like every Trump supporter?
Yeah, every Trump supporter.
Like, I'm waiting for this the swaying the public propaganda here.
Not even Trump supporters, but people just that don't
didn't like Hillary.
Exactly.
Or don't like Bill Clinton. There's a lot of those. Go to the next one. By the way, I'm going to show you, these are all of the examples, dude. They only give like 4 or 5. These are all of the examples on their blog. This one's from the same account, TENGOP. The picture has a picture of Comey, the FBI director, looking sort of constipated or consternated. And the words on the meme say, FBI Director Comey, resign now, the American people, like sign the American people. And the caption or the comment on it says, retweet if you also think that FBI Director Comey should be impeached for blocking the investigation and abetting a criminal. There were a lot of people there were mainstream people that said this. There were pundits on CNN who were saying this. I'm like, how is this Russian propaganda to sway anybody who thought Hillary Clinton committed crimes? There were lots of people who thought that. This idea is something that Republican senators and congressmen were saying. Are they agents of Russian propaganda? Go to the next one. So this is from at Crystal1 Johnson. It's a smiling, attractive black woman as the avatar. And it says, cops have killed 68 people in 22 days since Kaepernick started protesting. 68 in 22 days. Have no words. Hashtag Keith Lamont Scott. Do you know how many Americans of every race and color were tweeting things? Look at all the... Since Kaepernick started protesting. So what are they saying? That every football player who then knelt down was kneeling down because of Russian propaganda? That the American people are so stupid that, like, this wasn't real? That this was all brought on by the Russians? Is that really what's being claimed? I think this was the last one. Was that the last one? That was it. Oh, no, this one. From Pamela_Moore 13. Retweet if you think that it's a picture of George Soros. Woo, looking bad. Yes. Retweet if you think that President Trump should put George Soros on the FBI most wanted list. Hashtag MAGA. What? We've talked about George Soros. People have their own opinions about that.
Yeah.
By the way, that's all of the examples that they gave.
That's crazy.
So it's like, if you have an issue with George Soros' actions, you're an agent of Russian propaganda. If you, like Black Lives Matter, all of them, Russian propaganda. Trump supporter, Russian propaganda. Think that Hillary Clinton actually committed a crime? Russian propaganda. So what I found interesting, though, was, so I read through the blog because I was like, okay, this is crazy. Where is this going? Because it's obviously, if you're going to send an email to 700,000 people, like, this is a company-wide, this is a decision that was made at the top.
There's something behind it.
This is a whole strategy.
Yep.
So I'm like, what does this mean? What is the strategy? Go to this blog. Okay, so this is at the bottom of their blog. Moving forward. This is from the Twitter blog. This is following right after those examples. It says, even as we continue to learn from the events of the 2016 U.S. election, we are taking steps every day to improve the security of our platform and stay one step ahead of those who would abuse it. As part of our preparations for the U.S. midterm elections, our teams are organizing to 1. Verify major party candidates for all statewide and federal elective offices and major national party accounts as a hedge against impersonation. 2. Maintain open lines of communication to federal and state election officials to quickly escalate issues that rise. 3. Address escalations of account issues with respect to violations of Twitter rules or applicable laws. 4. Continually improve and apply our anti-spam technology to address networks of malicious automation targeting election-related matters. And, what is this? 5. Monitor trends and spikes. This is the one that's interesting. Monitor trends and spikes in conversations relating to the 2018 elections for potential manipulation activity. Just leave this on for a minute, because this is bothersome to me. 1. The second one, maintain open lines of communication to federal and state elections officials to quickly escalate issues that arise. So basically, working in concert with government officials while they are monitoring trends and spikes in conversations relating to the 2018 elections for potential manipulation. So basically, monitor everybody's conversations about the elections and report it to government officials. Okay, you can come back to us. That is an arm of the state.
Exactly.
You're a department of the government now.
Yep.
I mean, there's no. That's a governmental function that you're doing right there. So the question is, are they being paid to do this by the government? Are they being threatened that if they don't do this, like, where's the information on this? Now, will I stop using Twitter? No. Will I be blocked from Twitter at some point? It sounds like a lot of us are probably going to be blocked from Twitter at some point. But it goes to the idea of, what is the state? Who are the players? And that we need to be understanding where the state is now and not in a mindset of the past of where the state was. Yeah, the banks, okay, we get it. The banks, yes, they're there. Yes, got it. It's not the end-all be-all. There's a lot broader web of this whole thing. And any time that people are willing to participate, either for pay, that's like saying if the U.S. hires Blackwater, they're not called Blackwater anymore. I forget what or Triple Canopy or one of those. The Blackwater's got some weird name now that sounds like a cigarette brand. Forgetting what it like. It's weird. It's some weird name. It's just some random name. But if the government hires mercenaries to go and do something, that's the state.
Yeah.
That's the state. Like, because otherwise they're paying. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So if the government is paying Twitter or blackmailing Twitter to do this, which is, I think it's probably a combination of the two.
Probably both.
Then Twitter is a government controlled operation. We already know Facebook is. That's been known. And for those people who think and have thought that when people in the alternative media have brought up the fact that, oh, these social medias are controlled by the government, they're telling you they are now. It's not a conspiracy theory. The conspiracy is being admitted to openly.
Wow. It's crazy.
That's where we're at. And so we've got the media complex, the social media complex. This is why we need to start carving out some space. If we want freedom, we have to start carving out some space and operating within that space. And there's technological solutions that we need to be working on. And that's one reason why, if we're going to have any of those solutions, if we're going to have an economy, that economy is going to be cryptocurrency based, because that's free money, not like someone gives it away, but free as in liberty.
Yeah.
That's the free money. That's the space where it can start and we can have an actual economy inside of it. If we're not willing to do that, or if the narrative is just that, oh, buy cryptocurrency because it's going to make you rich, you're going to buy $100 worth and be a millionaire in 5 years, like, first off, that's not happening. But if we don't do that, then steadily, like, the mainstream media is already, the propaganda is already there. Now it's like, not only is it going to be pushed at you, but what even can be shared among people is going to be stifled. Right? Because regardless of whether or not some Russian provocateur was the one who put up the photo of the guy with the shirt on his back, number one, the guy made that shirt. If that picture and that idea goes viral, it's not going viral because it's Russian propaganda bots pushing it. It's going viral because it's something that people actually believe. And so they're stifling everyone's free speech to try to control a narrative for who? Well, you could tell for who. You could tell on whose behalf they're doing it.
The state.
Well, and a particular part of the state.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at this too, because it ties right into the Ross trial, because things change.
That's right.
And as they're changing, people need to understand that the only thing that can happen is change, and that we need to adapt to those things as well.
Well, and that we also have to realize that it's not like the state is getting less powerful. Like, it's not getting better. That's what people don't understand, is that, yes, okay, there is, now, I'm not somebody who's going in and saying, oh, there's systemic oppression and this and that. That's also a ruse, right? The white privilege and the male privilege, and that's also a ruse. Like, that's a fucking distraction.
Yeah.
Right? That's not where the oppression's coming from. The oppression is so subtle. Because these are oppressors. Do you think that they are not going to get better and better and better at more subtly controlling you in a way that you don't? They spend all their time on this technology.
And they can use things like this to test and figure out exactly what's happening. So, like,
and they've got all the money in the world to do it.
Right. And the resources.
That's it.
Because they can go and wave their guns in their face.
Well, and there's some of the smartest people in the world spend all of their time thinking about how to control people even easier.
Yeah.
That's their job at government think tanks. That's their job.
Wow.
So,
man,
let's look at, speaking of where we're getting out of, where shit is getting out of control. This story came up. I found it interesting because it's about narrative. It's about media. It's about why we have to dig in when we're looking at, well, just throw it up. I think it's the Sting story. Phoenix police, expect a lot of this. I'm going to make a prediction. Expect a lot of these stories. And every time, please read them. This one I found crazy. It's from azfamily.com, arizonafamily.com. Phoenix police arrest 86 in human trafficking sting. Okay. The Phoenix Police Department, along with Phoenix Mayor Greg Stanton, announced Thursday their completion of a recent vice operation. According to officials, the completion of the recent human trafficking operation resulted in 86 criminal arrests in just 10 days. Undercover detectives opened a massage parlor and arrested patrons who wanted them to perform sexual acts. The arrests occurred last December near the area of 7th Street and Greenway Road. The suspects were men and their ages ranged from 22 to 78 years. Mayor Stanton said that the task force made the city get tougher on enforcement. Quote, "That's why we created the Human Trafficking Task Force 4 years ago," he said, "to bring together outstanding community leaders, partners, to offer our city resources, and to make sure we are taking the lead on ending human trafficking in our community." Mayor Stanton added that the task force is turning the city of Phoenix, quote, "into a national model for combating human trafficking." Phoenix Police Chief Jerry Williams said the arrests were a reminder of what a huge impact sex trafficking has on the community. Quote, "It's a global issue," she said, "but that's not stopping us in the city from taking advantages that we have in our partnerships," and Councilman Waring alluded to this a little bit. "Every arrest counts." Phoenix police say they'll continue with these investigations and arrest, quote, "anyone participating in this criminal behavior." So, Christian, did you understand what these fuckers did? They opened the police department, the Phoenix Police Department, opened a massage parlor. Like, apropos of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
The massage parlor didn't exist. They took the funds, they opened a massage parlor, they staffed it with law enforcement officers pretending to be rub and tug, happy ending masseuses. Then, any guy that came in and asked if he could get a happy ending, they arrested him. And then they had the nerve to say, this was against human trafficking.
Jesus.
Like, where are the human trafficking victims? Like, you opened a massage parlor, and they must have marketed. That's the other fucked up part about it is, not only did they market it, but they must have marketed it
in a way
that made it appear that you could get a happy ending at this spot. Now, probably a lot of these cases will get thrown out. How many were there? 86. I'm sure a lot of these will get thrown out. Or a lot of these guys will plea to, like, next to nothing. But I'm like, you talk about resources being used for nothing other than control. Because presumably, some of these guys wouldn't have been participating in this activity at all had this business not been sitting there for them to participate in it. And I can guarantee you, I don't even need to see, but I can guarantee you that they spent quite a bit of money on the marketing and that they really, really, really made it look like it was a rub and tug.
I mean, all they have to do is put a couple good-looking girls on there and
put up a Craigslist ad, back page with some little winks and nods on it. You know what I mean? Some little emojis and whatnot. This is it, dude. Like, but this is happening with terrorism. This is happening with all of this because it's not real. None of this is real. The Russian propaganda, it's not real. And they're like, yeah, we're doing our best to combat human trafficking in the same way that Twitter's combating Russian propaganda. No, it's not. It's about control. Pure and simple control. And furthermore, propaganda against elections, dude, Voice of America is a U.S. propaganda radio and television funded by the U.S. government that's exclusively delivered in like other languages to other places in the world. They used to shoot Voice of America broadcasts into East Germany, into Russia. Same thing with BBC World Service. Like all of that, this is just normal behavior for states. Normal.
Yeah, and thinking back to the Twitter thing too, Twitter is a global network. So why are they so... I know they're stationed in America, in San Francisco, but what is their major, like, protective... It doesn't make sense to me.
Why do I need Twitter's protection from propaganda?
Exactly.
And what gives them the right What gives them the right to protect me in the first place? I didn't ask you to protect me. I didn't ask you for that. And what, like, that's the, that it's for me, it almost leaves me speechless, because I'm like, who are you? Who are you to make this decision?
Right.
I understand it's your platform. That's great. But the platform is yours. I don't want to be protected. I want to hear propaganda. I want to hear it.
Yeah.
I want to see the propaganda from the other side. I want to see the propaganda from both sides. Because then, and I want to see the messages that are not propaganda. I want to see the messages of fact. Because otherwise, how do I know what's propaganda? If I can't see every message around an issue, right or wrong, hyped, even the lies, how will I ever be able to distinguish what is true and what is not if I don't get all the information?
Yep. They're basically saying you can't make your own decisions, so...
That's exactly what they're saying. That's exactly what they're saying.
Man, I found the quote.
Go ahead.
I think it relates to this too. For to be free is not merely the cast of one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others.
That's it.
So I was actually thinking about this on a more in a what is freedom type perspective. And I was thinking freedom isn't necessarily the lack of responsibility.
Quite the opposite.
It's the love of responsibility.
Exactly.
And that's actually what he's saying there. And that's actually what I was looking at in comparing, the Ross case with Nelson Mandela as well. And man, it's powerful. And it goes to Twitter thing too. It's like you're responsible for your own decisions and your actions, and you should be governing yourself in a way where you can take control of that and not letting outside forces do it. They go hand in hand. Like, you have to, if you're a lover of liberty, you have to be a lover of personal responsibility. Yeah.
Like, they're literally the same thing.
But I think people are often like, "Oh, I'm free, so I don't have to do that." Or,
well, what they mistake is they mistake license with liberty. Right? So like, oh, I have a license because I'm free. That means I have a license to do this. I can do whatever I want. Right. Well, no, it doesn't mean that, because if you start to do something that infringes with the liberty of another person, you're going to pay the price, because that person has a responsibility to stop you from doing that. And I think that that's where people, when they think about like the main, I guess it's not even a criticism, it's really a fear, because you hear the fear coming out whenever you start talking about a stateless society, right? It's always this idea of like, well, once you get past roads, who'll build the roads? But it's the same idea of like, well, who will protect us from the murderers? Who will like punish and protect us from murderers? And it's like, well, first off, there's not that many murderers running around, right? 5% of, so if you take all the people with a criminal record, right, that are alive right now in the U.S., 5% of the people with criminal records commit 95% of the crimes. All right, so think about that.
Yeah, that's
just
crazy.
the people with criminal records, right, which is not even everybody. If you take the people with criminal records, you add up all the crimes that are associated with those. Obviously, there are some unsolved crimes and things like that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the crimes where people have been arrested, convicted, etc. 5% of the individuals who have criminal records have committed 95% of the crimes that have been committed. So what they're really talking about is, we need protection from like less than 1% of the population, because less than 1% of the population is basically committing all of the crime. Now, so what you're basically saying is that even though it's 99 to 1, and it's really more than that because it's over the span of time, right? So it's not 99 to 1. Because they're not all committing crimes at the same time where you need to break it up. It's like thousands to 1, right? Where all these thousands of people don't want murder, theft, rape, any of these things in their community. And will happily, at least a certain percentage of them, will happily deal with whoever is committing those things to get them the fuck out. But yet you want to create another institution that will... So basically what you've got is a majority that can easily deal with a minority. But instead what you want to create is you want to create a new minority, staff it with the criminals, and have it oppress everybody else on the off chance that it might, on occasion, stop or punish one of these other people in the minority.
Wow.
It makes no fucking sense.
No.
It makes no sense. But that's the not wanting to take responsibility is what it is. And it's like, this is the bug in the human brain. The bug in the human brain is, and I recognize this, especially when we're talking about the liberty movement, we're never going to get everybody to take responsibility. But we don't need everybody to take responsibility. What we need is a few people who will take onto their shoulders. This is the idea of Atlas carrying the world on his shoulders. This is the idea of Jesus carrying the cross. This is the idea that Mandela is talking about, right? It's that it's not just about pulling off your own chains. It's about taking the weight of the world onto your shoulders. Like, that's a true hero. It's Gandhi, right? Deciding, no, I'm not going to eat until somebody decides they're going to figure this shit out. And you know what? If you don't figure it out, I'm going to die of starvation and you're going to watch it happen. Like, I'm going to take this onto my shoulders because you won't take responsibility. So I will. And so that's really what this movement is about. This movement is about finding a critical mass of people who are willing to take onto their own shoulders the responsibility to live with principle and to bring up and address the fact when others are not living within principle. And to carry that message. And it doesn't take so many people. It doesn't take so many people because most of the world doesn't want the responsibility of that. And they're more than willing, if they see, oh, these people are committed, what they're offering is peace and prosperity. Oh, okay, I can go with that. I'm not afraid. I trust that they can bring that to me. That's really the job of this movement, is to find and to create that space. And for people to take it, yes, it is. You got to take the responsibility onto yourself. Nobody else is going to do it. You're not a victim.
Nope. And most of the pain will come from, like, most of the troubles and the pain and the anxiety will come from preventing that as well.
Of course.
And that's the crazy thing, is once you actually start to do it, it feels good.
Yeah, well, it makes you strong. You're strong. You're strong in a way. It's like you look at somebody like Gandhi, right? This little skinny Indian dude in a loincloth. But the strength of one man's will, not, ordering people to go out and be killed, not running for political office, not any of that. Just simply satyagraha, just holding on to truth. The strength, if one single man or woman who decides that they're just simply going to hold on to truth. Now, mind you, Gandhi himself, he fought against British rule, right? He didn't fight against British rule. He stood for the truth of the fact that the Indian people should be free to determine their own destinies. But he was a well-educated, he was a lawyer. He had his barrister's license. He was not a lower class individual. He was benefiting from the system that the British had put into place. He was a lawyer within their own system. But in order for him to hold to truth, and that was why he went so far away from the tweed suits and to the loincloth. And that's what makes the difference.
And this is also what Ross did.
I mean, well, and it's what his case is truly all about, is that it's holding firm to truth. It's the idea that, do two people have a right to peacefully trade. Because all of his charges are nonviolent. They brought up some idea of murder for hire during the trial, but he was never, they didn't really have a case on that, and because it wasn't true, so they never charged him. So all of the charges, and there's so many improprieties in the case, and we'll talk about that with Lyn. All of the charges are for, and it's not even for drug dealing. It's for the facilitation of individuals to privately interact in a peaceful manner.
It's crazy.
And the principle is, the question is, and I do believe, and this is something that I'm going to be talking about quite a bit in this next year, because this is, and it's sort of the basis for my next book that I'll be writing in the spring, it's this question again. Does another individual have the right to violently prevent you from peacefully doing X? To violently limit your ability or restrict your ability to peacefully do X. So does another individual, there's this third individual over here, do they have the right to violently restrict you and my capability to peacefully exchange property between one another? That's the question that we really have to answer for ourselves as a culture.
Right. So simple.
As a culture, right? Now, we've gotten, and again, it's cultures evolve. So we have to go back and look, and it's like, if I said, does another individual have the right to violently restrict my ability to peacefully express my opinion? Every American says, no, free speech. How about if that is to peacefully practice my religion? Oh, no. To peacefully assemble with my friends? No. To peacefully publish my opinions in a written format? Absolutely not. You know, then you get further. To peacefully possess a firearm. There's plenty of people who go to the death over that one. Or about to peacefully have privacy in my papers and my belongings. To peacefully own private property. To peacefully, let's say, to peacefully keep people from walking into my house, like by locking my door. Does another individual have the right to violently restrict me from locking my door when I leave my house? Of course, most people would say no. And so you start thinking that it's like, oh, wait. Maybe there's an underlying principle here. The underlying principle is no other individual has a right to violently restrict you from peacefully doing anything. Whether that's possessing and consuming plants, whether that's educating your children in a way that you see fit, whether that's modifying your body in a way that you choose, whether that's picking a sexual partner that between the two of you, you're two consenting adults, and whatever happens between the two of you peacefully, without infringing on anybody else's rights. No one else has the right to violently restrict you from doing that. And we figured out along the way, I mean, look, sodomy laws existed in many states until very, very recently. I think the last ones have only been removed in the last decade. Basically, homosexuality was illegal in many states of the United States. Wow. Miscegenation, in other words, interracial marriages, was a crime in many states. We've figured this out, but what we still have to come to as a culture is the understanding that it's not specific things. Right. There's an underlying principle.
There's a principle.
And every time we move toward that principle, we are moving toward a more positive, more peaceful, more prosperous world. So let's just adopt the principle and let's just go for it. Let's just go for it. One of those things is obviously cryptocurrency. I've got these stories. They're good stories. Let's cover them right now, and then we'll go to Lyn. So this is news number 2. This is going to be the new narrative. The new narrative is, and this ties directly in, we're seeing it right now, they have to criminalize cryptocurrency. There's so much value in it. Ross was the canary in the coal mine on this, but they have to criminalize it because otherwise they can't steal it. And they're going to steal big and they're going to steal little. And you're going to see this narrative going on. Put up this overseas. This is from Reuters. U.S. financial crime fighters eye overseas virtual currency platform, says official. Financial crime fighters at the U.S. Treasury are aggressively pursuing virtual currency platforms that lack strong internal safeguards against money laundering, a top official told a Senate panel on Wednesday. With more criminals using the emerging asset class to store and transmit their ill-gotten gains, Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, will pursue malfeasant virtual currency platforms even if they are located overseas. Sigil Mandelker, the U.S. Treasury Department's Undersecretary for Terrorism and Financial Crimes, told the Senate Banking Committee. U.S.-based platforms for Bitcoin and other virtual currencies are required to comply with anti-money laundering rules, including filing suspicious activity reports with around 100 such platforms registered with FinCEN. But many other countries have no such requirements. Quote, "The real vulnerability that we all have to address is that while we have regulatory authorities in place here in the United States, and we do enforce those, we need other countries to do the same," unquote, Mandelker told the committee's hearing on U.S. anti-money laundering laws. Mandelker said the U.S. government would also encourage other countries to introduce stricter regulation of virtual currencies, which law enforcement officials say are attractive to criminals making illegal transactions, mostly because they can be used anonymously. I want people to really pay attention to what that says. This is the U.S. Treasury Department saying that they have jurisdiction over everyone in the entire world. Mm-hmm. That U.S. laws apply to everyone in the world when it comes to cryptocurrency. Next, let's go to this auction. This is from Reason. U.S. Marshals will auction $52 million of Bitcoin seized through asset forfeiture. I said steal big, steal little. The little subtitle on this is more than 3,800 Bitcoin will be auctioned on January 22nd, including those taken from vendors on crypto markets like Silk Road and Alphabay. So, as the government is shutting down, the U.S. Marshals today are auctioning off some of the money stolen from Silk Road. If you want to know why Silk Road has to go down, here's 52 million reasons right there. The U.S. Marshals will auction off more than 3,800 Bitcoin seized with criminal and civil asset forfeiture in connection to a variety of investigations by the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and other federal law enforcement agencies. The Bitcoins will be auctioned off January 22nd. There will be 11 blocks of Bitcoins for sale, ranging in size from 100 Bitcoins to 813 Bitcoins per block. The U.S. Marshals said in a statement, anyone who wants to participate in the auction has until January 19th to register. It's not clear how much of the Bitcoin was seized via civil asset forfeiture or without first obtaining a conviction. This month's auction will include Bitcoin seized from Aaron Shamo, who was arrested in 2016 and accused of running an international fentanyl ring from his home in suburban Salt Lake City, Utah. Federal prosecutors seized more than $1 million in cash from Shamo's home, along with a stash of Bitcoin. That Bitcoin was worth only about $500,000 at the time of Shamo's arrest, according to the Associated Press, but was estimated at more than $8 million in December at the height of the recent Bitcoin surge. Oh, the U.S. government is a bunch of hodlers. Other Bitcoins on auction were once owned by David Summerfield, who pleaded guilty in September to drug conspiracy charges. He was busted during a federal crackdown on now-shuttered dark websites like Silk Road and Alphabay. According to Ars Technica, Summerfield sold Bitcoin to undercover federal agents and told them he used the cryptocurrency to facilitate his marijuana selling operations. Summerfield told the agents he preferred Bitcoin to traditional banks because it, quote, keeps the government off your back. This is the sixth time the federal government has offered blocks of Bitcoin for auction, but given the cryptocurrency's recent surge in price, it figures to be the government's largest windfall by a wide margin. The Department of Justice sold 2,700 Bitcoin with an estimated value of about $1.5 million during the most recent auction in August 2016. The largest ever auction took place in December 2014 when the DOJ sold about 50,000 Bitcoin with an estimated value at the time of about $18.6 million. So this last story here, just go to this, Monero, we'll just cover it very quickly. This is the, I'm not even going to read this one, but the narrative has now moved. The headline on Bloomberg Markets, the criminal underworld is dropping Bitcoin for another cryptocurrency. It says Monero and others lure criminals as Bitcoin's privacy weakens. Some coins post fake blockchain entries to hamper surveillance. So the idea now is, if you don't want the state to have a 100% complete record of what you are doing with your money, you are a criminal. This is the narrative. This is the narrative. So, Christian, it's going to become, what people need to understand, it's been all fun and games. It's been all fun and games in the crypto world, as everybody and their grandma wants to get involved. But we're about to come right back around full circle. People who don't know Ross's case, you need to listen in this next hour. You need to listen, because it's coming back full circle, and it's going to come for you too, because they want to steal it all. They want to steal it all. They're a bunch of criminals. They are the criminals, because theft, if there is a crime out there, it's theft. And armed robbery, especially when there's violence involved in the theft, is immoral. They're the immoral actors. They want to steal, and they are going to punish the moral actors, because this is how the battle has always been waged. We're in for a battle of cosmic proportions that will echo down through the ages. And we're going to hear about that particular battle. Before we go, I want to just say some quick things, good, because we're right on time. Code from Go, just want a quick, it says registration open now. No, registration is closed. Registration has been closed since the 19th. First class is on the 24th. Everybody who's registered should have been getting emails about this. If you are registered and you have not received an email, check your spam folder. So we have records of all the emails sent. We know that they have all been delivered, every single one. The open rate, however, is maybe only about 80%, so there's 20% of you out there who need to go check your spam folder, mark it as not spam so that you receive them, because this is where you're going to receive your address for the actual live seminar and for the archive of it. It's going to be via email, okay? So if you have any questions, if you are signed up and you have not received, you feel that you have not received these emails, you can email info@codefromgo.com using the email that you used to register, and we will make sure that that is taken care of. So this is a small percentage of you. This is not a lot of people. Most people, we can track the open, so we know most people have opened it. I'm super excited for this. This is going to be awesome. Wednesday, 24th, first classes. Live will be great. On demand will be great. If it's live, you can ask questions, and then there'll be 2 every week, so it'll be Wednesday and Saturday. All right, so keep that in mind, Code from Go people. Also, just 2 announcements. First, Liberty Fest, New Hampshire Liberty Forum, February 8th through 10th, 2018, Manchester, New Hampshire. You can use coupon code VIN10 for a 10% discount. Lyn Ulbricht will also be there. She'll be speaking. Nice. You can meet her as well. Looks like I'm not going to Acapulco. I have some pressing business. I actually have to be in Florida, unfortunately, at that time. But I will be the week after in Texas. I believe we have Texas Liberty. This is new, Texas Liberty Conference. You can go ahead and Google that. It's on the 24th of February at the Oasis on Lake Travis, which looks super cool. This is like a run-up before the Libertarian Party convention. There will be a lot of Texas Libertarian. I believe all the gubernatorial candidates will be there. I'm giving a talk there as well. So if you're in Texas, come out, and this is Austin actually. So come out and check it out. Okay, cool. Christian, let's go to break, and let's come back with Lyn Ulbricht.
The spirit of art. The spirit of technology. The spirit of individuality. Baby vodka. An ultra-premium spirit conceived by Armani. Handcrafted and distilled in Las Vegas by master distiller George Rotz. Each bottle, a celebration of the individual, custom engraved and hand-signed by the creators. Each element blending in harmony to create a beautiful experience beyond imagination. Baby Vodka, the spirit of Vegas. Created by Lyn Ulbricht. Tailored by Christian Rays. Available for purchase exclusively with cryptocurrency at babyvodka.com.
Welcome back to the Vin Armani Show. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Vin Armani. Also on Twitter and Periscope at Vin Armani is my handle there. And we are proud members of the Activist Post Podcast Network, so you can go and check out all of our audio archives at activistpost.com. Before we get to our interview here in the second hour, just want to talk to you a little bit about counter markets. Our first issue of 2018 is now out. You can go to countermarkets.com and get your first issue for free. We're actually coming up almost on our 1-year anniversary of this great newsletter. People reach out to me all the time telling me that they look forward every month to getting it. I have a bit of a special announcement. We've been working on a Bitcoin Cash secret project. Some of the people who follow myself and Counter Markets on Twitter may know we've been sort of teasing this a little bit. We are actually going to start with beta testers within probably the next coming week, and we're going to send out an email reaching out to Counter Market subscribers first. So you're going to get to test this really, really cool new I guess you could call it an app, new technology. Christian's tried it. He digs it. He really likes it. Everybody that we've showed it to is blown away by it. So this is just yet another advantage of being a member of Counter Markets. You can go get your first issue free. Counter Markets, Trends and Strategies for Maximum Freedom at countermarkets.com. So with that, I'm very honored to welcome to the show Lyn Ulbricht. Lyn is the mother of Ross Ulbricht, who in 2013 was arrested and charged in federal court for his role in the Silk Road online marketplace. Since his arrest, Lyn has been working tirelessly to defend her son. In May 2015, Ross, an Eagle Scout with no priors, was sentenced to life in prison. Lyn Ulbricht, welcome back to the show.
Always happy to be here talking to you, Vin.
Well,
a good conversation.
I guess we're going to see each other up in New Hampshire, in Manchester. I'm not going to make it to Anarchapulco this year, unfortunately.
I'm not either.
No, yeah. Okay. Well, at least we'll get to see each other up in the frigid north of Manchester. Yeah. So we have a lot to talk about. The last time you were on was May. At that time, Ross's case was headed to appeals. I want to get into all of that, but since that time, with sort of cryptocurrency stuff blowing up and with that being a big part of my life, we have gained a lot of new viewers and a lot of new listeners to the podcast who are interested in cryptocurrency and who are huge cryptocurrency advocates, but I find that very few of them know the details of Ross's case, and I think that in particular is a travesty. So if we could, for those people, and it can, even for the people who know it, it can never be discussed enough, if you could give us a little background on Ross's case, the situation, sort of starting from the beginning, and give us a synopsis so that then we can move forward with what the updates are here.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard to get the full story from the mainstream media, so a lot of people have distorted views of who Ross is and even what Silk Road was. Although I'm not particularly defending Silk Road, I'm certainly not defending drug use or any of that, but it was, Ross created Silk Road because he was on fire for freedom and free markets. He'd worked in the Ron Paul campaign. He had actually designed a video game before that based on Austrian economics and free markets to give people an experiential experience of a free market and what that felt like, and almost got it published. And then when he didn't, turned to the internet. So it wasn't about creating a drug site. It was about creating a site that was a real free market and where the privacy and anonymity of its users was protected. It did have limitations. It was an open market, pretty much product agnostic. It was up to the vendor and buyer what they exchanged. But there were limitations because Ross is a firm believer in do no harm and voluntary interaction. And so the administration, whether it was only Ross or whoever it was, forbade non-voluntary things that used force, such as child pornography was not allowed, stolen property was not allowed, violent services were not allowed. So it wasn't totally open, but other than that, it was fairly free. And there were a lot of legal and illegal things on it, as far as I know. I was never really on it, including illegal drugs. But there was also things like art and books and raw milk. And someone told me they were selling gold on there, and the government seized all his money, and it was totally legal what he was doing. So it was a big marketplace, and mostly the drugs were small amounts of marijuana. So Ross was arrested and accused of being the one and only Dread Pirate Roberts, who was the pseudonym for the person or people who were running it. In my mind, there's still a big question about who this was, and I have reason to think that there was more than one person, and went to trial. We have our website, freeross.org, that goes down a whole bullet list of the things that were wrong at trial and how Ross did not get a fair trial or a fair sentencing. And now but he was convicted, and he has now been put in a maximum security prison in Florence, Colorado. This is where the government puts its most violent and dangerous criminals. Ross has no history of violence whatsoever. None of his convictions were violent. There was no victim that came forward at trial to say Ross had harmed them. And yet, because of this draconian sentence that Judge Forrest gave him, which is double life plus 40 years without parole, not for selling drugs, but for a platform, a website that they say he was running the whole time that allowed others to do that. Life without parole. And so because of this sentence, he is in a place with violent gangs and other people who are dangerous. This puts Ross's life in danger, in my opinion. That each prisoner gets a designation score, and even with the charges that add plenty of points, Ross's score is so low that without that sentence, he would be in a low security, one step up from a camp that doesn't even have fences. So because of her sentence, they've put him in this place. And meanwhile, as far as the case is concerned, a petition has been filed to the Supreme Court. It was docketed early January that questions investigative techniques that didn't use a warrant, as well as the sentencing relying on uncharged, unproven allegations of murder for hire, which was never charged at trial, never proven, and some other uncharged factors. And so that's where we stand. There will be different groups that will join that petition, submitting amicus briefs, friends of the court briefs, saying why they believe the court should hear it. And that's where we stand now.
Okay, so that's a great synopsis, I think, for the people who don't know the whole history. I mean, one of the things is, there are some FBI agents who were associated with this. I believe at least one, if not both of them, are in jail now.
One's a DEA agent, Carl Mark Force.
Okay.
The other was working for the NSA and the Secret Service at the time. And they are corrupt. They've admitted to being corrupt. They stole over $1 million. They're in prison. This was but it was not allowed to be known to the jury that they even existed. And this is one of the points that I was referring to on the website. And not only did they steal money, but they had high-level admin access and could pretty much do anything they wanted on the site. It was unfettered access, and including act as Dread Pirate Roberts and change all kinds of things, which was the evidence shown to the jury. This wasn't allowed to be mentioned at trial.
And then this, you know, the murder for hire aspect of this has been unfortunately played up in the mainstream media.
Well, they love stuff like that, right? It's real exciting and sensationalistic, and yeah.
But clearly, if there was any evidence, at least as this was presented, I mean, they tried to, well, they did really throw the book at Ross. If there was any evidence, you would think that this would have been brought up at trial, but yet, I mean, that does seem like it seems like a very good reason for a case to be thrown out or at least retried if a jury or if sentencing is based on a supposed crime that's never charged.
Yeah, well, it had nothing to do with the jury because it wasn't brought to, he wasn't charged at trial. It wasn't one of the things they were ruling on. However, the judge allowed the prosecutor to talk about it to the jury and said, "Oh, you don't have to rule on this, but to talk about it," which of course is going to prejudice the jury. I mean, and the defense tried to stop it, and the judge allowed it. And at sentencing, it definitely, she relied on it to justify what's an outrageous sentence for a first-time offender, nonviolent. You know, it's just, you know, it got worldwide. Well, people all over the world have been shocked and very critical of this sentence. And she did rely on the murder for hire, and it is uncharged. And the thing is, we have to think, do we want the government to be able to basically put us in a cage and not have to even bring the charges to trial?
Right.
I mean, we're losing the protection of a jury, which is one of the pillars of our system, of our justice system. It's what the founding fathers put in place for this exact reason, to counteract a judge who has decided she knows better without having to prove anything.
So,
and you know,
I want to talk about, because I think that it's something that needs to be front of mind for all people who are getting involved in cryptocurrency or who have been involved in cryptocurrency, is I want to talk a little bit about, because I think that if anything, this is why the Supreme Court really needs to hear this. I want to talk a little bit about the use of evidence and how it was acquired in this case in terms of being taken off these digital devices, because it does seem like, as the move is now on to steal as much cryptocurrency from people for whatever reason on the government's behalf. Before we brought you on, I don't know if you saw, there's an auction going on today for $58 million worth of cryptocurrency. Some of it was stolen associated with Silk Road, and some of it with some other exchanges. So it seems like the move is on to civil asset forfeiture and to you know, to charge people with crimes so that they can take their cryptocurrency. Can you talk a little bit about how this evidence was collected and what the issue is with it?
Well, that's a whole other issue in the Supreme Court case, which is that the government is supposed to have a warrant and a legal warrant to go into your laptop or your or how they track you. And as far as the laptop was concerned, they had what's called general warrants, which is what we fought the Revolutionary War about partially, and what the founders wrote the Fourth Amendment about, because a general warrant allows the government to rummage through your home, for example, from attic to basement, to see what they can find. It's basically a fishing expedition. That is against the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment has a particularity requirement. You have to say what you're looking for, and if you find something else, you got to go back and get a warrant for that. If they had seized a physical desk and a physical file cabinet, what they did would be clearly unconstitutional. But because it was a laptop, the government basically says, well, it's not covered, and we can search his digital house at you know, unfettered, without a warrant. This is a big question for the digital age. Are we protected? We keep our lives on phones and laptops. So it's a laptop or a phone is a file cabinet on steroids. It's way more information than a file cabinet would have. Certainly one in my house. I don't even have a file cabinet. The other question was the investigation. They used pen register and trap and trace devices to geolocate Ross, and without a warrant and without probable cause. And essentially what it is that anyone who has an email address, the government can use that through various steps to track you. It's like putting a collar on an animal and tracking you, and without a warrant, without probable cause. And they can just do it. And this is a huge question again. And so how they get evidence, quote unquote, and how they investigate people is a big question right now.
So the other issue in this that's interesting to me, and I think that it's less the legal and more the cultural, and sort of one of the reasons why, and I was talking with Christian at the beginning of the show, one of the reasons why I have called Ross our Nelson Mandela, because I do believe that his case is about an old culture that I think is dying off, and that unfortunately it's just he was way out ahead in terms of his views that reflect a lot of ours in a sort of emergent culture that is about more liberty and more freedom, more respect for individual rights. You know, it's interesting to me that here we have the situation with the Silk Road, small amounts of marijuana being sold for cryptocurrency, and now here in Nevada, as of this year, I can walk down the street and go buy a small amount of marijuana from a licensed shop, and I can pay in cryptocurrency. I mean, in your discussions with Ross as this has carried on, and I know that he's paying attention to the culture, what are his thoughts on that aspect of this whole thing, of the cultural change in this period of time? Because I'm not exactly sure that were this to have occurred in 2018 that we would have seen the same type of case.
Yeah, if it hadn't happened in the Southern District of New York and with Chuck Schumer's influence, I'm sorry, I have no proof of that, but the judge was recommended by Schumer for her position. The lead prosecutor was Preet Bharara, who was Chuck Schumer's special counsel for years. And, you know, there's a lot of things that might have been different with different scenario, but including the cultural difference. But the thing is that, again, the law has not caught up with what's going on in the courts. They're applying 20th century law to 21st century, but also with the drug laws. A friend of Ross is in that prison right now, named Tony, is in there for selling marijuana 15 years ago, and he got a life sentence. And the federal prison happens to be in Colorado, where, like you said, you can go and buy marijuana, and yet this guy's sitting in a cage for life for selling marijuana. It's horrible. It's really horrible. And the drug war is fueling and supplying the prisons with inventory, basically. It's outrageous what's going on. As far as Ross, you know, Ross saw the potential for crypto. You know, when he first told me about Bitcoin back, you know, years ago, very few people had heard of Bitcoin. In fact, I said, should I get some? And he goes, no, Mom, it's too volatile. And I'm like, wow, that was bad advice. But anyway, it's probably worth $1. You know, but anyway, he had a lot of it. And I saw the potential for monetary freedom, you know, and that's what Ross has always been about. So he's happy that there's more freedom. He's happy that, you know, the potential for Bitcoin and other crypto is happening. It's all part of what he envisioned, but unfortunately, he's in a cage. And of course, he's no threat to anyone. And you know, it's a terrible waste, not only of him, but so many people in there.
I agree. So over the years, there have been different things that people could do to support Ross and to support the effort to free Ross. Now, as this thing has moved forward and we wait to see what happens with the Supreme Court, what are the things that people can do to support you and to support Ross? Now that he's moved, what's changed? How can people support this movement?
Well, you know, there's a lot of ways on freeross.org. Of course, you know, fighting the federal government's always expensive, and going to the Supreme Court's expensive. So ongoing, we will need financial support. I also feel like we need connections. with people in Washington, in politics, and maybe potentially a pardon. We need connections with people who understand the implications of this case, the injustices, that we can reach people who can do something about it. It's possible that a politician could convince the BOP to put Ross in at least a medium security prison as opposed to a maximum. For one example, I mean, Bernie Madoff is in a medium. His sentence was 130 years or something, but they have him in a medium, which I think, he should be. He's not physical danger to anyone. But I mean, there's exceptions made. There's reasonable things applied. The Bureau of Prisons has the power to do that. Ross himself, his lawyer, and I have all had guards tell us, Ross doesn't belong in here. He shouldn't be in here. He's a good guy. This is in the prison. And when he first came in, they said to him, what are you doing in here? And then they said, oh, I see the sentence. That's why. Again, Ross's life is in jeopardy. His safety is in jeopardy. This is not right. So any connections like that would be very welcome. Any, volunteer work, help. We have great people who, have helped us out. Like the new website we have is the result of my efforts, but also some great volunteers who gave a lot of time and effort to make it happen. I'm just me and family members and some friends, but I'm not particularly tech savvy. I don't know all the ins and outs of everything. And so, I can always use that kind of help. There's lots of ways, and there's a tax deductible option. There's lots of things. Buy on Amazon and we get it through our site, and we get a little bit. Just lots of different options. And so I really invite people to come see our new website. It's really, I'm really happy with it. And it has a lot of information. We are going to continue to add to that information as we dig into more and more of the record. And there will be things up there that aren't even that commonly known about the whole thing. But it's a work in progress, but it's good shape right now.
So yeah, for people who are in this movement and who want to see more liberty in their own life, I don't think that there's a better cause for people to be supporting. And I have to tell you, and I've told you this before, but I feel kind of as a developer myself, and as someone who holds the mindset of liberty, I feel kind of a special connection to Ross in that every time I hear or think about his story, I realize that could easily have been me. It could easily be me in the same situation, and I know that there are a lot of people watching the show who realize that too, and I think that it's important that he doesn't leave our thoughts, and that again, that if we really want to see liberty, I don't think that we're going to see it the way we want while Ross is still incarcerated and this is going on. So.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, the thing is, I cannot let him die in there. That is just unacceptable, and it should be unacceptable to everyone. It's just so unjust. And like you, I've had many people come up to me and say, that could be me. Ross, I want people to understand, Ross is not a kingpin thug. He's not someone that ever meant harm to anyone. He was an idealist, just like you, just like me, just like a lot of people who have ideals. And, we can argue that he made mistakes. He was young. He was in his early and mid-20s. And he's matured. There's no way he would come back out and create another Silk Road, despite what the courts seem to think. It's un-American to be caging so many of our citizens for things that it's really over-sentencing to an extreme degree. And it's alarming. Life sentences have quintupled in this country since the 80s. And I said, when I was growing up, you didn't get a life sentence unless you were a mass murderer.
Right.
Now there's thousands of nonviolent people with serving life. And it's just wrong. And so I think people need to pay attention. And it's part of a slippery slope that I'm really concerned about. I think we're at a tipping point in history, and we really need to pay attention.
I agree. Important words, important case. Thank you, Lyn, for doing everything
Thank
that
you,
you
Vin.
do. I'm going to see you in New Hampshire. I'm looking forward to that, to spending some time with you. So people can go freeross.org. Please go and check out the brand new website on Twitter, free_Ross. Lyn Ulbricht, thank you as always for being on, and I'll see you soon.
Great. See you soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Oh, man. Always absolutely heartbreaking, man. You know, what is there to say? I mean, I think it's the perfect indication of the state of the state.
Mm-hmm.
That's the real state of the union. Like, that's the real state of the government. And it's not just like, you know, the fact that we're having this conversation and the 2 FBI agents who stole, we don't know how much they stole, right? Or one was DEA and one was NSA. They're both in prison. They're both in prison. So they stole additional confiscated Bitcoin. They very likely kept the site. They had all the site access. They kept the site going to siphon more out. They're both in prison. And now, so those thieves are in prison because they stole a little too much and they didn't steal it in the way that the big thieves like it to be stolen. The big thieves, as we speak, are having an auction of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency that they stole. Right now, $58 million worth.
Jeez. Ironic.
Well, it's par for the course. It's par for the course because that's what this is ultimately all about. As you see, they're not protecting anybody. The law is every law is an opinion with a gun. And 99% of them are there to steal from you. They're there to steal from you. 99% of the interactions that you're going to have with government is them taking your money. 99.9%. They're not going to save you from shit. They're not going to help you. They're not going to protect you from anything. What you need protection the most from is them. You know, it's funny to me that, like, there was this Bernie Sanders video. I almost put it on the show, but I so can't stand him that it just would have, like, it would have thrown me off. You know what I mean? He's like nails on a chalkboard to me at this point. He's standing in front of the Library of Congress, and he's like, as you see, the sign says, during the shutdown, the Library of Congress will not be available. It will not be open to researchers and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, don't nobody give a shit about the Library of Congress? Like, no, nobody's been to no goddamn Library of Congress. Like, this is, and again, it's the Library of Congress. Like, don't expect me to feel bad while the congressperson sits in front and they're closing all. We closed our library. We closed our library. I'm like, yo, holler at me when you don't get a paycheck. Holler at me when your staff doesn't get a paycheck. Holler at me when your driver can't drive you and you have to take a fucking Uber. Because that's the real shutdown. Holler at me when you're working by candlelight because they turned the lights off in your office or locked you out. Or the heat's off because they're not going to pay the heat bill. Holler at me then. Because all you're doing now is you're stealing, and you're going to give yourself a new credit card so you can steal harder. Now you got to steal even harder. And what? I'm supposed to go for that? Any of us are supposed to go for that? And at the same time trying to say, oh, yeah, we're protecting you. Protecting it? What? Protecting us from people like Ross? I mean, that story of the guy, talk about heart-wrenching irony. Like, that's almost like the Innocence Project, you know, when these guys have been in prison for 25 years for a crime they didn't commit. Could you imagine sitting in a maximum security federal prison in Colorado where recreational weed is legal with life in prison for selling marijuana? What do you do? Like, how do you, where like down the street from you are guys who have a license from the government to grow massive amounts of marijuana and sell it.
And it wasn't even like he was actually selling it.
Well, I'm talking about the guy she was talking about who's in there.
Oh, I see, yeah.
And he's not the only one. There's plenty. So it's like, that's why I say it's like the Innocence Project. It's like, but, and this is the reason why. This is the reason why. Let's not have this happen again. The way that we have it not happen again is that we don't say, oh, well, this specific instance, weed should be, and it's not legal, not legalized, decriminalized.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I should see as many mentions of marijuana in the criminal code or the civil code as I see mentions of spinach. Seriously.
Right, seriously.
It's a plant.
Good point.
Like, who decides what plants are? Here's what's interesting. I can go right now on Amazon, right? I can buy Morning Glory. I can buy Belladonna, Nightshade. I'm forgetting what the most, somebody will know it and probably put it, the most poisonous plant is. It's a flower. Can't remember it. But Belladonna will kill you. Nightshade is poison. I can buy that right now. I can grow it all I want. I can grow it all I want. I can grow the most poisonous plants in the world in my backyard. No crime. But marijuana, which can't kill you no matter how much you smoke. Mm-hmm. Like you might die from asphyxiation of there being too much smoke, but you won't die from the chemical of the marijuana, right? That is illegal. So the thing is, like, we're not even choosing which plants based on some sort of objective measure, because the most poisonous plants are completely legal. And so this is like, if we don't want this to happen in the future, the only way for it to not happen in the future is to be like, no, dude, it isn't speech, it isn't assembly, it isn't the right to keep and bear arms, it isn't any of those things. It's the principle that no other individual has a right to violently restrict your ability to peacefully fill in the blank.
Do anything.
Fill in the fucking blank. And then, with no exceptions. Like, that's the real that's when I get frustrated. I get frustrated when there's libertarians who claim to be libertarians, but then they're like, oh, but I'm for carbon taxes. Oh, but I'm for universal basic income. I'm for universal health care. And you're like, wait. Meaning you're for taxing people. Well, yeah. So somebody's got to pay their fair share. And it's like, hold on. That is you violently restricting my ability to negotiate a salary with an employer and to possess the fruits of my labor. Like, it's no exceptions. No exceptions. Because the exceptions, because what do? Can we stop moving through the exceptions? Because that's all we're doing now.
Yeah.
We're moving through the exceptions. And what's happening is, because we don't have the principle, now it's going to be even harder to get weed really out of the control of the state. It's going to be even harder now.
Oh, they got used to that money.
Well, and they have the money to support the propaganda in the other direction. And there's an entire industry that's licensed, right? That has the support of the government, that has a monopoly, and that has a vested interest in not allowing, in using, they're taking advantage of state power to maintain their monopoly, or their cartel, because it is a cartel. Every single one of those licenses is a member of the cartel. They've signed up, they've paid the money, they did the background check. Oh, you're accepted into the cartel, here you go. Go ahead and open your shop. Don't you dare open a shop without being a member of the cartel, because then that's still a crime. It's not decriminalized at all. But this is the same thing with the cryptocurrency. And those people, Coin Center, fuck those guys. Oh, we need to have reasonable regulations. We need to have reasonable taxes. No.
Yeah, you're seeing it a lot now, too.
No, it's math. It's at the finest level of analysis, it's math. At a little less, at a little lower definition level of analysis, it's a voluntary exchange between people. No, you don't have a right to violently restrict my ability to exchange my property with Christian. No, you don't. No, you don't. You just don't. And by saying that you do, by saying that there's some exception to the principle, it's like, well, then we're just going to have to take another step and another step. But every single time that they can get you to give up that principle, you've taken one step backward into tyranny. Because if they could take that, they could take anything. If you'll abandon the principle for one particular reason, well, all they've got to do is just make it always part of that reason. They can take everything from you. That's the principle. And if we will accept that principle, we don't have to have any more Ross Ulbrichts. We don't have to have any more Nelson Mandelas. Nelson would have, believe me, Nelson would much rather have preferred to not spend that 27 years in prison, regardless of if he became the first black president of South Africa. I'm sure that he would have rather had those years of his life as a free man to do something with it. And I myself would much rather be living in the world that is more reflective, living in a world that is more reflective of the principles we're discussing than being here trying to help push those principles forward. Believe me. But somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to do it. And I think that's just it. Just look at the world. Look at the world. And it's not even, it's for the response. So this is where it comes to the responsibility. What you said about the quote, the Nelson Mandela quote. Here's where the responsibility is. It's not to say someone else doesn't have the right to violently restrict my ability to peacefully do X. No. It's this responsibility. It's the responsibility to say, I don't have the right to violently restrict anyone else on Earth's ability to peacefully exist in whatever way they want to peacefully exist. I don't have that right. I don't have the right to vote that somebody else do it. I don't have the right to pay somebody else to do it. I don't have the right to get together in a group and do it. I don't have the right, period.
It's so simple. It's so simple, but overlooked. Completely overlooked. Because when you break it down like that, it makes so much sense and feels so right that you can't say that there's any other exceptions to the rule, you know?
And I think it's one of those, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I think that that's all that our job is, and it's what I view my job as, is opening people's eyes. And then once you see it, the second responsibility that you have, and this is the harder one, you have to take a look at what you are doing and where you're at. Take a hard look, and you have to decide who you want to be.
Yeah, I'm sure. And there's going to be somebody out there watching this show that has that position, and their whole life is going to change just because they heard those words, you know?
Look, and I tell people, like, look, this is a hard pill to swallow. There's people who work for the government. There's people who are cops. There's people who are in the military. And it's like, yeah, this does mean you're going to have to make a decision. Because once you see it, and then you go back to work as a cop, like, you simply can't say this. What you are saying by walking into work, getting back to belief systems, as we talked about, what you are saying by walking back into work and just going about it and having that cognitive dissonance is you are saying, no, I have the right to violently restrict my fellow human beings from peacefully doing thousands of things. I have that right. I'm some sort of special individual. See, they don't have the right to violently restrict me from being a cop.
Right, exactly.
I won't give them that right. But I have the right. Because I'm something different. I'm someone special. And that's something that you got to deal with in your own heart and your own soul. But the question is, do you really want to live your life that way? Is it worth it? Is it worth whatever little shit paycheck you're getting? Because it is a shit paycheck compared to where you could be if you really want to adopt, even with that same training. Like, it's a shit paycheck compared to if you go and do like executive protection. You're going to get paid a lot more benefits, and you're not violently coercing anybody. You're actually protecting and serving the people who are paying you to protect and serve them. You're not going out arresting people. You're not going out enforcing an opinion at the point of a gun. You're protecting a person or a family, and what better thing to do is than that with those skills? That's you're a hero now. Instead of a villain, you're a hero. But you got to make that decision for yourself.
Powerful.
Well,
wow.
We're a little early, but we've covered a lot, dude. We've covered a lot today. So I think maybe we'll end it a little early. Let's do that. Just one more. I want to just say it again for the people if they missed it on the Code from Go thing. Since it's Wednesday, throw up this Code from Go again. Listen, if you have not received an email and you are registered, if you've received a payment receipt, you're registered for Code from Go for the first class, please, if you have not gotten an email, check your spam folder. You will see emails from Code from Go in that spam folder. Please look at the information inside. It's going to have a schedule coming up. You will have the links. Wednesday morning you will receive the link to the first live seminar. So that's going to be in your email. It will be the email that you registered with. If you have any issues, please email info@codefromgo.com. This is going to be a very few people, but I'm talking to like the 3 or 4 of you that this really matters to. info@codefromgo.com. Please email from the email that you registered with, and we'll get you taken care of on that front. So again, because these events are coming up, Liberty Forum is February 8th through 10th in Manchester. NHLibertyForum.com. You can still go and get tickets. Use the coupon code VIN10 for a 10% discount. And then also just added Texas Liberty Conference. This is on the 24th of February at the Oasis on Lake Travis in Austin, Texas. So if you're in Texas, or if you're in the Southwest and you want to fly in, this should be really, really awesome as well, and I'm looking forward to that, although I will not be at Anarchapulco. But shouts out to all the people there. Maybe I'll make it there next year. I'm sure I'll see a lot of you guys at various different things. In addition, Bitcoin Meetup, Bitcoin Las Vegas Meetup. Should have put the graphic on there. February 1st. This is coming up at Las Vegas Distillery. Where can they go to Twitter, and we'll or my Twitter or Christian's Twitter, and we'll post that up at Vin Armani or at Christian_Rays, RAIS, and February 1st,
7 to 9 p.m.
7 to 9 p.m. Las Vegas Distillery. You'll get a chance to taste some baby vodka. You'll get a chance to buy some products and to taste some other products. Are we gonna do cocktails? What are we gonna do?
They're gonna do cocktails.
Cocktails.
They'll have cocktails. And
get a tour of the facility.
Yep. It's gonna be a cool event. Very
cool. Las Vegas Distillery here in Henderson, Nevada. If you're in the Las Vegas area, or even if you want to fly in for it, Bitcoin Cash Meetup. That should be really, really fun. I'm looking forward to that. And I think we may even show off the secret project a little bit. Gotta be a little hush-hush. That's coming too. And of course, beta testers the first people to beta test will be Counter Markets subscribers. All right. I think we've covered it all. So I want to say thank you to Christian, of course, as always. Thank you for today, brother. And thank you to Lyn Ulbricht for coming on. keep your head up, stay strong. We're all behind you. And if you want to check out our podcast, you can do that on iTunes and Stitcher. You can see the archives of our show at vinarmani.com. And wow, yeah, that's it. That's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next week at 10 a.m. Pacific time, Monday. And until then, stay free.